In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to retain the customers that you've worked so hard to acquire.
From Engagement, I'm David Millay, and this is Flip the Switch.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Flip the Switch, where we sit down with leaders in customer experience, employee experience, and we try to figure out what are the trends that they're paying attention to? What are the experiments that they're running? What are the best practices that have guided them to success throughout their career? And then we take all of those principles and insights and we apply them to the world of sports and entertainment. And recently, we've been working with brands outside of sports to help them turn their customers and employees into fans. So today we are sitting down with Ed Frame. Ed is the CEO and founder of a company called Exemplify CX out of Australia. And Exemplify really works with brands to help them turn buyers into repeat customers. So this episode is going to be a little bit interesting. Right before the episode, Katie from our team had done a lot of the prep for the episode. And so we invited her to come onto the show. And so it is the three of us. It'll be Ed Frame, my colleague Katie Rudy here at Engagement, and me. And Katie and Ed actually continue the conversation. I had to jump like 45 minutes into the episode. So Katie takes over and drives that conversation with Ed. But we get into some really interesting topics about what to do with your customers once you've acquired them. So we're going to talk about Ed's 7 phases to customer longevity, which I think will really give you an interesting framework for how to approach keeping your customers longer and ultimately generating more money for less effort. We all know how tough customer acquisition is, and turning them over all the time is not something that you want to get into as an organization. If you can keep those customers longer, you're going to cut your costs down and your bottom line is going to benefit a ton. So let's get into this episode. I don't want to talk anymore and tee it up. We've got Katie Rudy and Ed Frame on this episode, and we are really excited to jump in. So here we go.
All right, so we are here with Ed Frame, and we're also here with Engagement's very own Katie Rudy. What's going on, guys?
Happy to be on the show.
Going very well. How you going, David?
All right, we're going to see how this goes. I think there's going to be a lot of talking at the same time, but screw it. Let's roll with it. Ed, we are pumped that you are on the show talking to us here really about customer retention, around kind of deepening emotional connections with current customers. We talk a lot about that with our clients, but I'm excited for your thoughts and your strategies that you work with your clients. So tell us a little bit about Exemplify and the work that you guys do.
Yeah, great. So essentially, like you said, we look at really the post-sale customer experience. And with a lot of our clientele and a lot of different businesses, we really look at what happens, what does that customer journey look like from the moment somebody makes a purchase, and how can you transition them and funnel them through to making repeat purchases and becoming brand advocates. So somebody who's, a really loyal customer, sharing and referring your brand, really, you don't want those people to shut up about talking about yourself. So it's really being a lot more intentional with how you deliver your product or service. And we're not there to reinvent the wheel for businesses in their kind of service offerings. We might be able to contribute, but it's really more about if somebody sells a product or service, what is the actual experience that the customer delivers, receives from that business? So, and being very intentional to funnel them through that post-sale retention funnel.
And so the primary product or service or offering that you guys have is you're working closely from an advisory perspective with organizations, or tell us a little bit more about like your actual service that you provide.
Yeah, certainly. So at the very start, we actually start with a workshop. So when it's really a magic wand, no budget idea session to really look, okay, if we had unlimited funds, what would be the best experience that you could make for your customers? Because this is a great way to involve senior leaders to really, they already understand a lot about their customers. It also allows us to view where there might be some gaps of knowledge, but really have a look at what are the different ideas and different ways of using video, email, gift giving, SMS, like all kind of different channels to create that better experience. So it really starts with that workshop. And then from there, we go into, prioritizing this, okay, what's the either the low hanging fruit or what's going to have the most impact for that audience. And then together we'll put basically a strategic plan together, and then an implementation guide. So whether that's somebody from our team does that, or they might have people internally from marketing and sales. Often I find that a lot of the low-hanging fruit content has actually already been created. It's just redistributing it through the customer experience rather than the marketing and sales. So it's really kind of going through that and making sure that the client's getting that experience is starting to be built.
Without giving us your secret sauce, like what are some of the questions that you ask in those workshops to kind of flip the script? I mean, a little bit is when we work with some of our clients, it's like, well, we know what our customers think. We know what our fans think. How do you get them to start thinking differently about what the customer actually thinks to start that process?
That's a really great question. One of the things, and I've tried this a couple of times, is looking at really that sort of from post-sale. There's essentially 7 different phases that a customer goes through. And one of the things that I ask is like, what is the worst experience that your customers could receive? What are the different things that you would never want somebody to associate with your brand? So it could be, if it's an e-commerce brand, it could be like, everything always gets broken, or, things don't come on time, or we don't communicate frequently. So actually sometimes flipping the switch, I managed to get that in. So managing to sort of flip that on its head and actually look at what is the worst possible experience. Often that some of those things come up where somebody might have an idea. It's like, actually, that might lead to one of these bad experiences. So that's one thing that we look at. But also the internal emotions, I think, is really the key part of it, and that's where it's not necessarily it's really how does your customer feel at each part of the stage? What are their emotions? Are they excited? Are they nervous? Are they, perhaps if it's a client who's about to attend a kickoff call with 4 different people that they've never met and they're heavily introverted, is this actually a good experience for them? Or is it just the way we've always done business? So it's a great way to really look at what is the norms and that particular audience and say, actually, is that person going to be comfortable going through this process, or what? And if not, what can we do to make them more comfortable to begin with? So it's really, what is the worst possible experience? And then also, what are the internal emotions that somebody might have at each stage in the customer journey?
I love it. Well, Ed, talk to us about, in your mind, kind of what are those 7 phases within the customer journey that we should be paying attention to the emotions of our customers in?
Yeah, fantastic. So the first is everybody has a problem. So your customer has a problem and they've made a purchase. So it really starts with that problem. And your problem is really your sales and marketing phases. And it's not something that we spend too much time, but to really set the scene, your customers have a problem. If you've ever listened to Donald Miller talk, I know that he would very much agree with this. So yeah, customers have a problem. And then they make a purchase to solve that problem. So they either purchase a product or service to solve that problem. And what happens when somebody makes a purchase is there's that element of buyer's remorse, there's that excitement, there's that waiting period before you actually get started, whether it's a product or service, whether it's waiting for delivery, whether it's putting it in the boot of your car and driving home from the shop, whether it's, waiting for a kickoff call. There's that waiting period. So it's, what are you actually doing to stop your customers from actually thinking, oh, was this actually a good purchase before they've actually started? So there's that purchase period. Then there's what we call the proceed period, which is getting started. So that's really the first formal interaction that somebody has with your product or service. So it might be the unboxing experience, or it could be that first kickoff call. It could be, those kinds of things to really, what is the first kind of formal interaction? And then there's really, okay, now you're working to achieve your goals. So a great example of this is whenever I got married, I needed 3 things. I needed a gym membership to put on some muscle. I needed a haircut, and I needed a suit. Now, my haircut from start to finish was about 30, 45 minutes. Katie, I'm sure your experience of haircuts and hairdressing is much different to that than what David and I
Just a
have,
little longer.
but just a little longer. So yeah, but for the haircut, that was 30 minutes. For the gym membership, that's about 6 months of trying to achieve my goals. And, so your experience is very different in, I've got a problem trying to solve that. One's over in 30 minutes, one's over in 6 months. So for every business, it's really, what can you do to encourage your customers to keep trying to solve their original problem? It doesn't just start and end when somebody uses your product or service. It's really somebody is using your product or service to solve that problem, and it's really up to you to make sure that they solve that problem so that their problem gets solved. You celebrate those wins, and then essentially you can there's trust built. They know that you can solve their problems, and now it's a case of what other problems can you solve, or has somebody enjoyed the process and got good enough results to want to go through that again. And that's where it really comes from a problem solved into proven stage, and then into the proclaim stage, which is brand advocacy. This is somebody who's talking about your business. This is somebody who is sharing on social media. This is somebody who is actively bringing you word of mouth customers. So it's really looking at the stage for that for different businesses, and how you can move customers from one stage to the next.
So going back to the solving a problem, we work with a lot of sports and entertainment organizations. Their primary offering is an experience, and an experience isn't often thought of as solving a problem. So how might we shift that mindset and reframe it to think about solving a problem with an experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a couple of things that there's certainly elements where you can look at the individual problems that somebody might have in that experience and try and solve those. But I would say that from attending a sport event, and I've attended many, there's not necessarily, it's not like a problem, but there is that aspiration, there is that identity, there is that I want to be able to feel this emotion by attending this game. I want to be able to see perhaps my favorite players. I want to be able to see my team win. And, I think the problems are, first of all, if your sports team wins, that solves a lot of your problems. But if but attending a sporting event, it's really like, why would I not watch this at home? And why am I, attending this experience? And then that experience along the way of, getting my ticket, actually, being able to enter into the stadium quickly, being able to, buy drinks without spilling them on people, being able to have that atmosphere and that love for live events. So it's really kind of I would say, yes, you're right. It's not necessarily you're solving the problem, but you're definitely, somebody is wanting to get something out of it. Whether that's, just for the love of the game, or to have that core memory, and to really experience and to see live action. So,
Well, Ed, I know you do this in your work with clients all the time, of like asking why and digging and digging, and even the things that you're talking about. Like, I think sports teams can go one step further and be like, why does somebody want to see their favorite player? Why does somebody want to jump up and chant? And I do think a lot of times, right, like somebody's choosing, whether it's a concert, whether whatever the experience is, whether it's going to get a vacation on Airbnb, or whatever vacation home rental they're doing, whatever the reason. If we're coming out to visit you in Australia, right, there is some problem that typically they're solving, even if it is like an additive thing. It could be that they're really stressed out from work and they need a vacation to Australia, right? Because they just want to forget about everything. They know that if they go the next state over, their cell phone's still going to ring. They're still going to get those emails. Whereas like going to a sports game, I think for us, a lot of times it is about like wanting to feel connected to a larger community that cares about a bigger thing.
For sure.
And I think you can, if you peel back those layers, if anyone in any business, it's the same thing. Like you can go one step further and almost always, to Ed's point, get to some kind of problem that their aspiration, like Ed, like you said, is there. But there's a problem underneath that ultimately they're aspiring to something because their current state is not quite at that spot. So I love what you said though about like the aspiration and helping them get there.
That's it. And when people ask me, how did I get into customer experiences, and why is that what I do? And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said, I think the last time my parents bought me a physical gift as a birthday present was when I was about 7 years old. I think from that, it was tickets
Good
to
for
a
them.
sporting event and some form of event or going somewhere. It's just, and to this day, I have very little physical possessions, but I've got a lot of fond memories. So, yeah. And you're right, there is something very different that a sporting event brings. And it can even be that it's like, okay, actually, I want my wife or I want my son and my daughter to experience this. I want them to get all the wonderful things that come out of attending an event.
Well, I think to your point, like as you talk about in a lot of your videos and content that's out there as well, is like once you have identified that problem, then I think you can say, okay, now how do we, to your point, how do we stream that across,
Yeah,
knowing that that is what they're trying to solve for? How do we make sure if they're going to escape the hassles of their
yeah,
everyday life, we got to make sure that this
yeah.
experience doesn't have hassles, or they're not going to come back.
E-
Um,
Exactly that. Exactly that.
one thing I do want to jump into, I mean, you triggered this thought for me as you were talking about getting gifts from your parents and having them always be experiences. I do think with experiences, right? Like you don't receive something tangible. Like even let's talk about like maybe like an airline ticket. You might get that
Yeah,
email confirmation, but you're not necessarily getting that boarding pass or something physical to unbox, right? So if you don't have
correct.
something physical to unbox, like what are some ways that you can create that almost that kickoff in advance or that unboxing experience if it's digital?
That's a great question, actually. I haven't necessarily thought about that from that unboxing experience and from that having that tangible gift. I've thought of it more in that sense of, okay, somebody has got this key milestone, like the date that they fly. No one's really buying tickets for flights, on the day. And if they do, that would be a luxury to have. But
Ed,
but
Ed, Ed,
yeah,
Ed, Katie and I are going on a trip on Friday that we just bought our tickets today. So you might,
fantastic.
but anyway,
That's it.
keep going.
But yeah, so but essentially, for like let's say a dream destination holiday, you've done all the thinking, the planning, and then yeah, the making a purchase is really that one part. And my wife always says that she's actually says that it's the excitement of going away that is sometimes just as important as the going away itself. Being able to have that one thing to look forward to. So from the airlines example, what I've seen work really well is trying to mitigate stuff on the day. So, lately post COVID airports, I don't know about in the US, but in Australia and in Europe, they, wait times were just horrendous. Like it was 3 to 5, maybe even 7 hours in some places just because of lack of security staff. So it's a way of like, how can you make sure that your customers are aware of this so that they don't miss their flight? How can you make sure that they're going to get there on time? How can you make sure that they're, by the time boarding gets called, that they are in the right place at the right time? And so that's kind of those things where it's like, how can you make sure that for, for for sporting events, making sure that people are aware and so that there's no surprises or at least unpleasant surprises when they turn up, that they're turning up on time, enough time to get into the venue to grab their seat, grab their beer. And so, yeah, so I haven't necessarily really thought about it as that. But I think you've hit a real opportunity of that memorabilia piece, that, what used to be a ticket stub is, how can you actually have that physical memory of this event that you've attended? Yeah,
But
that's
but I
a
think
good one. Right,
I
gotta
think
ponder that one.
I think to that point though, there are just so many, going back to what you were talking about identifying what are the emotions at every step of the
Yeah,
journey. I do think there's, no matter how good you are in your business, if you go back and look at those steps of the journey that Ed has, and we'll link to those in the show notes, you really can identify like, how do we remove hassles? How do we create
yeah,
surprises? You can optimize for a lot of different emotions throughout that you probably
yeah.
haven't yet. No matter how
Mm,
good you are in your business.
that's it. Exactly that. And there's there's many companies like Disney are, a global example of just how they just, from the moment you enter, everything is so well thought out in advance. You know, Disney have thought about your next move 3 steps ahead of time. They've thought about, if your daughter is going to want to do this, what's in it for you as a dad, and all of these different things to make sure that everybody has that really personalized, unique experience. And like you said, removing the bad things, if a dirty pavement could really kill and destroy that experience. So, okay, we've got to make sure that this part is really, really spotless, and clean. So, but yeah, couldn't agree more with you there, Dave.
So we talked a lot about the emotions. It's obviously something that resonates a lot with us and experiences. You have a lot of emotion. There are a lot of emotions when you make a purchase. What are the emotions that customers experience after a purchase that companies aren't paying attention to? What are some of the things as they move into the progress stage that we could be paying more attention to?
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, so just to summarize that, the purchase is really that buyer's remorse. Okay, I've made this. Is this going to work for me? Then you've got the proceed, which is that unboxing. Is like, okay, I've got it. I'm getting it working. And then yeah, that progress phase is really all about encouragement and almost first of all reminding people of why they've got this in the first place, and being able to, I know that you have this problem, so this you're using this product to solve this. So, but also, encouragement to keep on going. There's, I can think of a good planner app, for example, something like a good application for like a SaaS platform. The first thing that you want to try and do within those 30 days is to make people really heavily reliant on your platform. So you want them to be creating habits that get them logging in and doing things that actually make them really sticky. So if it's a collaboration platform, it's about, adding people, and you want to make sure that, okay, if we're all using this platform together, we become reliant on it. So essentially we're now sticky and retained. The progress phase is really all about continuing to assist people. It's giving them those, okay, it's no longer the low hanging fruit of, here's the first 3 buttons that we want you to tick. It's like, here's some more of these advanced features. Here's some more of these, things that take a little bit more, and a few more aha moments throughout the process, essentially. But also encouragement to keep solving those problems. A personal trainer is a great example of this. Is when you get to that lull of somebody's been working out for 6 weeks, but you both know that it's going to be about 3 months, 6 months before they really start seeing proper results. It's what encouragement can you do? And gift giving is probably one of the more primary examples for that in like a B2B service, where you've started, you're going through the process, things are not quite as exciting as they were at the start, and they're not going to be as exciting as they are at the end. So it's what can you do to keep morale high, encourage, and so like kind of surprise and delight gift giving is a fantastic example during that B2B service space.
I think it's I'll use a classic example. I was using a project management tool today called ClickUp that Katie and I have used, an engagement we've used at some point in time. We haven't been using it lately. I've been using it with another organization, and I'm like, you know what? Let me try to figure out how I can, because if I was going to get interviewed by a company today and they were going to ask like, what is your greatest weakness? It would be organization, hands down. And as Katie chuckles, so I was like, all right, how can I use this tool to like put all of my stuff that I have like written down on all these loose notes and papers and notes apps, can I put them all into ClickUp? And I was watching a tutorial on like how to use ClickUp for personal productivity. And so I think it is those forms of like, hey, this is how else you can use that product to your advantage and keep me in the ecosystem, more reliant in the ecosystem than what I initially came there for. And I think
exactly.
I think
that's
go ahead, Dad. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that's something that SaaS platforms have a fantastic advantage of, what is the intent for using the product? So if somebody, like you said, if it has been, if it's, we want, B2B collaboration, or we want, personal organization. It's just like, okay, great. I'm going to send you a small amount of videos and very, very specific content so that you can solve more of that individual problem. I'm not going to bother sending you stuff all about integrations and collaborating with like other people around, because that's going to be for Katie. Katie's going to be able to get more value out of that because that's going to be her problem that she needs to solve. Dave, you just need to make sure that you're getting your stuff in the right side of things so that Katie isn't asking you where things are all the time, which I imagine she might be.
Facts. Or it's me asking her where things are stored. And anyway. All right. Well, enough talking about my weaknesses. Let's talk about the actual fun stuff with getting customers more loyal. I think one of the cool things about if a company's really utilizing the 7 stages that you've laid out, what we get is really this kind of non-incentivized loyalty from a customer. And I think that's the goal, right? A lot of times you think about like punch cards or different loyalty programs, and it almost feels like we're bribing customers to stay with us. Like but non-incentivized loyalty is really a hard thing to put into place. So like, I don't know, maybe let's talk about some of this, and then maybe let's go into some of your favorite like non-incentivized loyalty programs.
Yeah, brilliant. So you're completely right. Non-incentivized loyalty is really the goal, but I think incentivized loyalty does have its place, and it can be that a great way to look at it is starting once you've got somebody into that. Okay, right? They've solved their problem. You've proven that you can do that. They've perhaps started to make some more purchases, and now you want them to be okay. How do we get this person to really live and breathe our brand? And one of the things that you can start doing is incentivizing habits that you want to create. So if you, for a brand who actually, I think a sports brand is a fantastic way of doing this. If you've got season ticket holders who are, spending lots of money with you, like what are the things that you can do to get them to capture particular things on social media and share it, and then tag the team in it, and it gets shared across either fan pages or other social media accounts. And your incentive can be, oh, this will get you, 10% off your next purchase. Or, if your incentive is good enough and somebody is starting to, is already becoming that brand advocate, just the fact that their Instagram story is getting shared on the Miami Dolphins team page it's a pretty good incentive, and so so I think there's that creating habits and kind of rewarding those things that you would love people to start naturally creating, and documenting some of those great experiences. And it could be that you've opened up a very particular interactive part of the stadium experience. There's maybe sort of like, at the tailgate program, a very interactive program that you want people to start going through and spending money in. So it could be, hey, when you finish going through this, like, record a certain part of it and share it with us, because we'd love to share that out, so that people are then seeing firsthand. So it's, does that make sense of that? There's kind of there's that creating the triggers and creating the things that you would want people to start doing more organically. And then once that just becomes natural, and there's many brands out there that, I see when somebody orders one of they do like living room and bedroom rugs, and every day I see about 5 or 6 different people posting their sort of ripping off the plastic and rolling it out, and this is how good their home looks now, and that none of that's incentivized. That's just the culture that they've created among their customers.
I think what's interesting there too, like social has really allowed this non-incentivized loyalty to really become a lot easier. And because I think there's an aspect of like gamification principles of like this surprise hit of serotonin when, okay, my post has been shared. But I think there are a lot of sports teams that don't use user generated content the way that they should. And if sports teams or your company is scared to get into that, the other way that you could use social media from a non-incentivized loyalty perspective is just commenting. Like we see this massively on TikTok. And we've had people on the show that have talked about this as well from a strategy perspective. And what's Amy's last name? I'm blanking.
Keene.
From the Panthers.
Amy Keene.
So we had Amy Keene. She was the head of content, and I don't know what her actual title was. She led content. She's a baller with the Carolina Panthers. And what she said was like, the way that we grew as an NFL team was not from our organic content. It was from commenting on people's stories and on people's content and engaging with it.
Yep.
And so if you don't want to put their things on your feed because you've got a certain aesthetic or a certain brand standard,
exactly,
that's fine. Go comment and engage. Imagine your season ticket holder that loves you. He's got you guys are commenting. Like that is going to drive loyalty.
Exactly that. And that's, I'm actually coming back to what you mentioned of even just that unboxing experience. I think I do remember seeing, I think it was either the Oakland Raiders or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but having that, their unboxing for their season tickets. And like, so that's kind of the physical thing that people are now receiving. And it's a really great unboxing experience. So you're going to want to record that and, you know, show it off. And like you said, it can either be, either it can be user generated content used by the team or from the team going in and commenting like, hey, you know, can't wait to, you know, so glad you're going to be in the stands reading for us this year. It's just like, wow, Tom Brady just commented on that. That's
There was one, not to go down this rabbit hole on that, but there was like a TikTok I saw earlier this week of some kids that had come home from college and they were like, our mom, this is how obsessed our mom is with Yeti. If you're familiar with like Yeti coolers. So they cut to the kitchen and they had laid out all the Yeti cups and thermoses and different things that she had, and it covered the entire kitchen counter. It was crazy. So Yeti commented, engaged with it, and then said, send us your address and we'll hook you up with some more stuff. And then they made a whole nother video that went viral of all the stuff Yeti had sent her. And so it was just one of those ways of like, you're just making that person more of a super fan.
Exactly that. There's really, once somebody has already started spending money with you, anything that you do, like you've already proved that they've got money to spend with you. The more that you interact with them, the more it's an investment, and it's that person's just gonna just keep on, you know, spending more with you, coming to more games, and all kinds of wonderful things.
Awesome. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to get into numbers a little bit. Like this is all great in theory, but let's talk numbers. So you've shared a couple of figures in your videos and through content on your website that I want to hit on. Yep. So the first of those is that it's 5 times cheaper to retain an existing customer than to acquire a new one. And increasing retention by 5% can increase profits by almost up to 25 or to 95%. And so I think like particularly in sports, like we often hear people talking about, we have an older fan base. And so they're constantly trying to say, okay, especially college sports for us. So they want to invest in like this younger fan and try to get younger fans in acquisition. And I think they spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on that. So in your mind, how should companies prioritize spend on retention versus paid advertising and acquiring new customers?
Yeah, great. So, well, one of the first things interesting that you said that, you know, having that older fan base and moving in and, you know, trying to attract that new fan base. One of the great things for sport and entertainment to understand is consumer spending has really shifted, and more millennials are buying way more experience than the, you know, older generation, baby boomer generation, even though it's a less rich cohort. So there's just a, you know, social media has really sort of driven that. But in terms of what can people do to, what was your specific question again?
The specific question was really asking, how should companies think about prioritizing retention spend or acquiring new customer spend?
Yeah, great. So the way I've started to really look at with customers for different businesses, when's the right time to invest into retention. And it's really from, as soon as you've started to gather a number of customers, and that can be very different for each business. Sometimes that's 10, sometimes that's 10,000, and so, but it's really a case of, okay, you've done paid media, you're advertising, you're doing all your organic, you're doing all these different marketing things, and somebody's coming in and you're finding that just 75% of people are buying once. They've got one order, and the lifetime value of that customer is just on that one purchase, which is it's expensive. And even though that we're starting to see cost per click go higher, it's never been more competitive. It's never been easier for somebody to start a business, maybe not an NFL team, but to start a business and take a market share of that and drive that cost per click up. So if people are only ever ordering once, the ability for to get a real profit off that is very difficult. So once you've started to see that, okay, right, this group of people are only ordering once, how can we get those people to order multiple times? How can you get them to keep coming back? And how, what are the advantages for them to how do we get them to then start bringing friends? So we've got this pool of people that are just bringing in our business, and really that sort of 80-20 rule of 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your audiences. So the answer is really different for most businesses, but it should always be something that you think about from the moment you're selling your first product. And I'd like to think of it as more of your customer funnel doesn't end at the sale; it ends well past that. If you're only doing marketing activity and your cost of your business is all about what does that first sale, even to like sales team incentives. If you're, how different would a business operate if we actually gave people incentives based on lifetime value rather than the first sale that somebody comes in? What a huge mindset shift to that handover between sales and service, when somebody's like, actually, I could be making money until the day I die just by making sure that this person fits in well with this brand. So it's it should be something that you think about completely. But I would say for my clients, it's really when they've started to get, okay, we know we've got a product that sells well. We've got a marketing and sales team that are doing well. Not doesn't have to be great, but you're selling your product. Your people are trusting in you enough to make a purchase. It's just how this is how can we make them buy so much more from you and multiple different products and services from that regard.
No, I love it. Well, I know I'm going to jump here in a second. I got to run. But Ed, you and Katie, I appreciate you coming on, Ed. This has been awesome. I know you guys are going to keep talking and keep diving into this stuff around retention and acquisition and how do we really create loyal fans and loyal customers. So, Ed, it's been awesome having you. Look forward to our next conversation. Katie, we'll see you guys later.
It's been a pleasure, David. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let y'all keep going.
Keeping it going on brand loyalty, obviously the things that are most interesting to us are the brand advocates. How do you create more fans of your brand? We're not just talking about fans in the stands. We're not just talking about the ones that are in the pits for their favorite bands. Fans of any brand. So does the customer journey have to be completely seamless for a customer to be a brand advocate? Or how do you create those loyal fans of your brand? How do they become the brand advocate for you?
That's a great question. And my answer to the seamlessness, no, it doesn't have to be seamless, but it is important on how you start and during the middle and how you end. These things are important. The way that I talk about this of, your customer's success is reliant on the outcomes and the experience. So having a great experience, but not having the problem solved and getting poor results, no one's going to buy that again. As for if somebody has been given, okay, well, we've got good results and the problem's been solved, but gosh, it was really difficult to solve it. It was a really I didn't enjoy the experience of it, then that person's also not going to buy. So those two things work really hand in hand. And what we've kind of found is that the more organic brand advocacy comes from people who have had not only a great experience, but their problem has been resolved, and sometimes in dramatic fashion. Um, so yeah, those would be really the sort of the two things that work hand in hand. No one is ever going to have a seamless customer experience. Nobody is ever going to have no complaints. Nobody is ever going to have, nothing go wrong on the day at a sporting fixture. These are things
Right.
that are just always going to happen. But it's how you deal with them is also a huge part of it. People are, willing enough that they're not going to, things aren't going to go perfect 100% of the time. You're going to get a beer spilt on you. So you attend enough NFL games or enough college games, you're going to come home covered in beer one day, and that's just how that is. But if you're walking around and a staff member saw it happen on the jumbotron and gives you a free team jersey, it's just like, I'm a fan of that team for life. That's and so things like that of how you really deal with some of the negative things that have happened, and turning that what was a negative experience into a really positive experience is something that can really create brand advocacy.
It's something that we're working with a number of our clients on heading into this football season is the service recovery process, and that you can actually increase the brand loyalty and the brand advocacy that a customer has with you just because of the fact that they had a problem and you were able to fix it. That because of the fact that you invested in them, you made them feel more a part of your organization, that you took the time to solve their problem. They're actually going to be more of a fan for you than if they had a seamless journey to begin with.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. It's sometimes this is something that I actually need to research on, but I'm really curious to understand when you order a pizza and the wrong
Mhm.
pizza arrives, okay? And then you either go back to the pizza place or you call up the pizza place and you tell them about the order. And usually, I don't know for your local pizza place, Katie, and I'm assuming you eat pizza. That's
I do eat pizza.
but that's it. So, but I'm curious. It's just like, if I was to get the wrong order, but then I was then told, oh, okay, next time you're in, you keep the pizza that you've got, but next time you're in, we'll give you a free pizza. Like, I'm probably more of a fan of that pizza place than than if I had just got my order correct. And so I'm really curious to understand, actually, and probably might do a bit of research on this, of like, with pizza owners, do they find that like the more mistakes they make sometimes and treat and correct them, overcompensate in correction, does that actually create a longer lifetime customer for that pizza place?
Well, I think it'd be interesting to study because, if I'm a vegetarian and I got a pepperoni pizza, obviously now I can't eat the pizza. So that does
Uh,
not solve my problem, just giving me a new one.
that's
Now
true.
I got to figure out dinner again. So that you didn't take care of my
Yeah.
problem. And now I have two problems to solve. So I think it all depends on
Yes.
how you actually solve the problem that would increase the brand loyalty and whether you would actually become a bigger advocate for that company or not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes. Yeah. But yes, you're completely right. It's how you solve it, and your solution, the way they solve it for Katie is going to be different for the way they solve it for me. But yeah, yeah. So I think there is definitely something in that. It's how you deal with the negatives and turn that negative experience into a positive experience that can really keep a customer for life.
Yeah. So, as we're wrapping up here, let's talk about some opinions that you hear in customer experience, brand advocacy, retention that you flat out disagree with. And why do you disagree with them?
Yeah, great. So I think the the one of the things that you actually brought up is just like, it's got to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, it's not it's people aren't going to do it. We always have this um perception of what we wanted to provide versus what we actually provided. And the great thing, the difficult thing is because we're on the inside, we know all the things that have gone. It's like, oh, maybe that email didn't quite have the correct wording, or maybe, that the way I dealt with that situation probably could have been done better. And but from the customer side, they have no idea of all the the different ways that's been solved and the different processes that you have under the surface. So it's for them, it's really a case of like, okay, is this a good experience or not a good experience? And it's always constantly building on it. So I think, like you said, it doesn't have to be seamless, but being able to what I find is sometimes the reason people don't ask testimonials is because they think that they haven't done a good enough job. But when they actually ask how they actually get feedback on how that project was, the client has been like ecstatic. They've loved it. But sometimes you're dealing with a CEO who does not show any human emotion. It's so hard to read during the process. So so it's sometimes very difficult to gauge that, and then right at the end, it's I'm sure if you guys are working directly with Bill Belichick, you're gonna have no idea how how you guys are doing right up until the very end, and he'll kind of give you a one-word good or not good answer. So yeah.
There are sometimes the nod is all you get, and that's all there is to it. You know that the nod is a good thing.
Yes, that's it. And so sometimes it can really be that it's just like your own perception of how you think somebody perceives your brand is very different to how they actually perceive your brand.
And what's one thing that we haven't covered? Is there anything that you want people to know or understand that we haven't talked about yet today?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking me. But I actually feel that we have covered a huge amount. This is, I've done a couple of other guest podcasts, and this has been by far and away the most knowledge given. So I hope you've got a lot of value out of it.
What's one thing listeners should take away from this conversation?
I think to really not underestimate the lifetime value of your customers and how important that is. Paid media, social media, new customers, new acquisition is all well and good. But it's really it's the lifetime value that you create that will make your business more profitable. And in terms of approaching that less wealthy cohort, I think there's there's so much potential of those younger millennials, Gen Z. They are looking for more experiences. They are looking for more things to talk about and to share about. So the more interactive action and the more personalization that they get is something that will then lead to more growth. We've had social media, we've had viral social media for about 10 years now. And it's, there's commonalities to what make things go viral. And so, that's something that I sort of would probably really sort of push on that, trying to attract that younger cohort for sporting and events. But knowing that when people see that, people will then want to experience it, and that younger generation will want to experience some of those things as well. I hope that's been a good answer for you.
That's a great place to leave us. And thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Love having you on the show. Where can people reach you, find out more, find your content? Give us a couple of plugs.
Yeah, great. So I'm heavily active on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, just Ed Frame. And then our website is exemplify.com.au. We are based in Australia, so don't forget that .com.au. But feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or come via the website. You'll see a lot of our customer retention strategy and the introduction to the workshops and those things there. Join me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation with you and learn more about what team you're helping with or what event you're looking to put on and how we can continue lifting the lifetime value of your customers.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Really look forward to our next one, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome, Katie. Thank you so much.
To all of our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Hey guys, before you head out, just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. That helps more of your peers find the show as they search for ways to get better in their own roles. But this podcast is just a small part of what we do at Engagement. In our normal day in the office, We're crazy focused on helping athletic departments and sports and entertainment companies generate more revenue by becoming more customer-centric. To see how we might be able to help your organization, visit engagementpartners.com to learn more. Download a free guide, check out our blogs and case studies, or schedule a call with us if you want to see how we can help with your particular objectives. Our goal is to help you create deeper connections with fans and generate more revenue. So when you're with us, hopefully you find a nugget or two that helps your cause.